Welcome to the world's most legendary podcast, In the Cold. This is a new spin-off kind of thing that I'm about to do. It's probably going to be a 15, 20-minute videos of me just basically walking around and talking in a selfie style while doing a podcast. And the reason that I'm doing it right now is because I don't have that studio setup anymore. Well, at least at the moment, because the person that was doing the podcast or producing it for me was one of my friends, and I just had a falling out with him. And I really don't want, a podcast that could be a pretty good thing to be destroyed because I have to use that guy's basement. So this will be the podcast style. Eventually, I'll have my own tripod and, be recording. Of course, you're going to hear background noise, so if you hear loud ass cars, the people in this town that I live, they can't fucking drive. They all get a car, and for some reason they think they're the king or queen, and they want to speed. So I live in this little small schmuck ass town known as Port Huron, Michigan. So anybody that's from Michigan that's listening to this, they probably know what Port Huron is. Don't suggest that you move here. Just because the water looks nice don't mean it's a nice place. This town is way overpriced and just low value. But excuse how I look. Friday I'll be getting a haircut. But because it's winter, you kind of got to let the beard grow out, and the hair grow out. And, usually I'm pretty well trimmed down. But, this is going to be the new thing for now. A new little setting. You get to see what the Port Huron looks like. This is really the nice side of town. And I'll probably just be going over a variety of subjects and just keep it short and sweet, at least until I can get mine. Of course, my teeth going to be a lot whiter too, So I'm working on some things. For those people that don't know, I'll probably be getting a mic as soon as I can, because some of the podcasts, it's almost like, it's not, the audio's not connected, even though there's what you call a microphone. The audio clips are still with the guy that's producing my stuff that I'm not getting along with. So I don't know if I'll ever make amends and get those and connect them, or I'll just have him keep the audio, and maybe I'll get it from him at a different time. It's just that one of the things you got to be careful of is when you got somebody that's close to you helping you with a project that you're talented at, is that when you have a falling out, that you don't want to have the situation where that fallout kind of becomes easy for him to use against you. Because sometimes people get petty. It's like, well, I don't like you, or you're a piece of shit, so since you've been a piece of shit to me, I'm not going to let you use my equipment. So, but for those that don't know, I think I mentioned him. His name is Justin. You've seen me nip at him and make fun of him at the beginning of my podcast. He's kind of an idiot. So, and of course, he set up his stuff to try to do his own podcast. But, the real funny thing is that, he's not as intellectual as I am. And me and his friendship go way back. I'm not going to get deep into, some of the things that have happened. One of the things that sparked a feud between me and him is that he owed me money. And I wasn't happy with the time frame it took him to pay me back, and it was pretty petty change. It wasn't like it was $500. The guy does mortgages and shit like that, but, I guess, I don't know, maybe the housing market is crashing, and, that most small amount of money was too hard for him to pay back, but it almost came to blows. And then there were some things that were said that I didn't like that he said. Oh my fucking God, dude, I can't stand these loud ass fucking garbage trucks. And there's two of them. Fucking idiots. So yeah, I might just decide to walk through this little graveyard over here because I'll get some quiet time, hopefully. I like walking past dead people, but it is what it is. This isn't the quietest town, even though it looks nice. This is the quietest, and hopefully there ain't nothing in my beard. But yeah, back to the story. I was getting on a sentiment, I think it was last week, or, when I did the last podcast about Facebook and, the differences between real life and Facebook. But, I think I didn't touch on another sentiment. Like, if there's any men watching this channel, because I don't want this thing to sound like a red pill or Meek Towel moment or any of that. But, I've just been noticing, like, on Facebook, there's just a lot of this guy bashing going on. Like, Facebook, when I first got on Facebook, man, it was just a website of just, kind of just being petty and stupid and, kind of just going at people hard and roasting. And it's done turned into, like, this man-hating website. Like, I'll be going through my news feed and, sometimes I'll stumble upon, it'll be a chick that I know. And, she'll have relationship problems with whatever. Oh, here comes another car. So I got to walk back out. She'll have relationship problems or whatever. And I'll notice that her Facebook rhetoric will get real dark. They'll start talking about how the patriarchy has oppressed women and, how, it'll be something like, if men understood that, let's say because I'm trying to think of something off the fly, like there might be a Facebook status that a woman will say that will be directed at men, and it'll be about some societal thing. It'll be about, well, if men didn't rape women, then women wouldn't feel unsafe. You know what I'm saying? And, I started to notice that I got a lot of close, like, affiliates, like family or even friends, girls that I, thought I considered liking, that be saying stuff like this. Like if men shouldn't rape, as if men, like they're born to be rapists. And I just been noticing there's been like a lot of propaganda against men. Men suck, men stink, men this, men, they can't ever please a woman. Men, all they want to do is oppress women and take women back to whatever era they thought was quote unquote oppressing. Because the funny thing about these women today, these modern day women, is they actually have never really lived in that era. So, they claim that the 1950s was very oppressing for women and women were supposed to do what their husbands say. Was there some truth to where women had to listen to their husband? Yes, but, I'm going to tell you right now about the 1950s, and this is it's going to sound kind of mean, but a lot of the 1950s women wouldn't have tolerated a lot of the shenanigans, a lot of these women say today. They would have been labeled as a harlot, a whore, and not by men, but by their women adversaries. See, you can't compare the 1950s to 2022. You just can't, because the women in the 1950s, the only thing they gave a fuck about was their family and what their husbands, what their husband was doing and whether their husband was providing, and they were worried about their home and their children. But the woman and the man were lockstep together. All right. So the truth be told is, though, that even men back in the 1950s, when they're married and they came home to their wife, it wasn't like they came home to their wife being agreeable all the time. It was kind of like today. I think the difference between those women today is that their issues that they brought to their husband, they brought it to their husband in the conformity of their home. They weren't on no damn social media. They were concerned about making sure that whatever their husband was doing was for the greater good of the family. All right. And these women today don't seem to understand that those women in the 1950s, they were very harsh and brash women. They didn't fuck around. If you didn't listen to if you were a daughter, because if you were a purple pink haired girl back then that wanted to talk shit to your mom, your mom tells you to go clean your room and you tell her no, you might not have lived to be able to tell the story. You know what I'm saying? Because those women back then, they didn't play. They were not like the women today, where I feel like the mothers are friends to their daughters. Like a lot of the mothers, man, they take selfies with their daughters. The women back in those days, they made sure that their kids were raised based on whatever their values were. And yes, the woman held you to that quote unquote patriarchy. Like a lot of women try to say they hate the patriarchy, but then they want bits and pieces of the patriarchy. They want a man to quote unquote hold the door open for them and be chivalrous. But, there was a code that was enforced by both parties that you had to live by. And if you didn't live by that code, well, then you would be disqualified from ever receiving whatever the quote unquote good treatment they claim they wanted from it. Let me walk back here because I hate it when cars walk in front of me. But I've been noticing on Facebook, like, you got these people, man. I don't know if it's they got their heart broken. I don't know what it is. But they'll get in these women. They'll get into a sentiment about men. And, it'll be based on what they quote unquote call psychology. They think they're a psychologist. They talk about relationships and how a man's supposed to have emotional intelligence. And really emotional intelligence for them is just basically a man telling them, to cut their bullshit out. And this is why I tell dudes, there's nothing wrong with being nice to a woman and being loving and caring. But you have to tell these women the truth, man. You can't sit there and put them on and this is why I'm upset with men, because there's too many low-level men on the internet putting these women on a pedestal. And when I mean putting them on a pedestal, I mean women who are saying things derogatory towards men and you're agreeing with them. You got to put a woman in her place when you have to. That doesn't mean you got to be mean or disrespectful, but you can't let these women, especially these low-level women, because, a lot of times it's almost as if they're trying to act as if the woman can do no wrong and the man can do no right. The truth be told, there are a lot of bad women out here, just like there are a lot of bad men out here. And, some people, what I'm saying right now with the society and where it's trying to go, from an ideological perspective, they're trying to venerate the woman over the masculine, the feminine principle over the masculine. That's their goal. That's their dream, but it's all in the form of socialism. It's all in the form of, some ideology that these people think they want a piece of or want to be a part of, but it's really not going to benefit us at all. Just like I was talking to a caseworker the other day. His name is Scott, and he's a fucking idiot, but he's a quote unquote liberal. Man, what is up with all these damn cars driving through the freaking, man, holy shit. Like, damn, this motherfucker driving through the damn freaking, the graveyard. Now there's 5 cars there. Jesus Christ, guys. It's a graveyard. It's not a shortcut. They're driving through all these dead people's houses or dead people's, this is a graveyard right here, as you can see, where all the lovely old people that are allegedly resting in peace over here. And you got cars by the thousands driving through like it's a busy street. Like, come on. And I kind of need this space for me to be kind of comfortable. And now cars are pulling up all around me. Which, by the way, try not to get off subject. Ever since I've done this podcast, I've been noticing that I've been getting a lot of attention that's kind of strange. It's almost like, I'm getting that look. I don't know how many people are watching this podcast. I mean, as far as YouTube numbers, it doesn't look significant. But I've just been noticing, like, there's just been a lot of people, eyeballing me almost like I'm a coach that made the, help led them to a state championship or something. And it's just been strange. So, I really don't know what's going on. Oh, thank God he didn't pull in here. But, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. But yeah, my hands are getting cold. I'm going to get back into the sentiment with the whole, the whole new movement. And it just kind of seems like I'm just spitballing. Like they're like, Lance, what point are you getting at? Well, the point I'm getting at is that I just, like, people don't seem to understand, like, a lot of the girls, like, because a lot of dudes, a lot of women are wondering, where did all the good men go? And, these same women be on Facebook talking very derogatory and nasty towards men, and some people don't seem to understand correlation, especially modern day women. For example, how people say you get more sugar than you get with spite, or you get somewhere more with sugar than spite. Excuse me, I'm just spitballing here. It's kind of the same way I would, those people don't seem to understand the correlation with men. Like, do you really think that you're going to shame men into conforming to what you believe is right for society, when what you believe is right is based on venerating yourself and it's not for the collective? You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine having a wife that only cares about herself. She doesn't care about you. You're just the extra. That's why I'm like, I kind of don't like the whole strong independent thing, because, to have a job and to pay bills doesn't really make you strong or independent. It just means you're doing what everybody's had to do since the beginning of time. You know, so it's clear that a lot of these movements that are being pushed on the woman is to venerate her, to empower her, to empower her to be not only just empowered, but to also take some of her chaotic aspects and troll men as well. You know, and I find myself sometimes I'll get on Facebook and, I'll watch or I'll see a video on TikTok. Oh my fucking God, here we go again. I mean, shit. Hold on a second. Hello, fat bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are taking shortcuts through the graveyard just to get through I guess. I don't know why they can't just turn around in someone's driveway. So I'm going to try to walk out of this place because, I don't want to be around dead people for too long. It's kind of messing up my podcast. I thought this would be a spot where I could get away with that. After I get done with this, I'm going to go grab me some Chinese food and just go lay down. Or whatever I'm supposed to do. I think I got something else I got to do as well. But yeah, this podcast, getting back to the sentiment, here comes another one. See, I can't go nowhere without being bothered and bombarded by cars. I thought the graveyard would be the best spot to go. And it's not. Look at this, another damn car. Like, people, if you need to turn around, it's called people's driveway. It's called, you can even go down that block and turn around. Like, why turn around where people are dead? Makes no sense, does it? No. But that's how people are. They so ignorant, they'll drive right through your grandma's grave just to turn around so they can get to McDonald's. Sad. But yeah, I might have to touch on this sentiment on a real episode because I'm having a difficult time. But for those listening to this podcast, they know what I'm getting at. It just seems like right now Facebook is promoting that propaganda. And notice that, like, another thing I want to say is that's funny is that, a lot of these women will call men, misogynists when they respond back to the criticism, because I noticed that there's a lot of women on Facebook, they'll criticize a man, criticize men. And then one man or one or two or three men will come at her and, kind of put her in her place and kind of say, look, maybe you need to pick better men. And that's another thing that people need to understand. Like, the company you keep is going to be the energy that you get back. All right. So if you hang around, if you love getting with bad boys that ain't got shit for them, and you give them your all, then they're going to take your all. They're going to use it up, and then they're going to cast you aside, and they're going to go find another woman that will give them the same thing, and you'll be left with nothing. And I notice there's a lot of girls out there like that. They don't want to get with a man that actually has his shit together. They want the man that doesn't have his shit together to turn into a man that has his shit together because they're around. And unless you're Jesus Christ, that's not going to happen. So, I'm going to touch on more of the Facebook and the social media. People need to know something. Social media is not real, man. Half of these motherfuckers on Facebook talking they shit, gassing themselves up, man. They depressed as fuck in real life. They lonely, they depressed, they don't have no one around because, Facebook is a website where, I think is very toxic for a person that is not getting, because you got a lot of people, let's say, for instance, you got a chick on Facebook that don't know shit. She's got 5,000 friends on Facebook where she could post on Facebook about how much men suck, and she'll have 3,000 to 4,000 people to validate her instead of having maybe a family member or two or more to pull her aside and say, look, sweetheart, you need to pick better. You need to understand what a good man is, because, like, people talk about love, people got this fake perception of marriage and relationships as if it's supposed to be fun and games every day. Man, marriage is not fun every damn day. All right, ask anybody that's ever been married. It's not fun every day. It's not one big party for the rest of your life. It's, really, marriage in this day and age is a corporate ass contract. That's all it is. And you're forced to sign it. And if things don't go right, you're going to have to pay the broad that you married, double or, half of what you have, or even 65 to 70% of what you have in exchange to get rid of her. That's all marriage is. It's not really a love or anything. It's based on a corporate setup because the government is now involved. So when the government is involved in your relationship, it kind of and especially considering that, yes, back in the 1950s or 40s, yeah, you were expected to kind of get married and stay with your husband for the rest of your life, but nowadays, nowadays the woman can just divorce her husband because she don't like him anymore. It don't even have to be a real reason. So I think that's what's making the marriage rates go down. A lot of men are starting to wake up and feel like they're no longer loved and respected in this society. So they don't want to put any effort into getting married to a woman, especially if she don't love and respect him as well. And she's too busy indulging in these ideologies that, she doesn't really understand are toxic. They're really just set up to kind of destroy her and her by her through veneration, venerating herself, because, women love to be told what they love it when you tell them what they want to hear. And that's what's going on. And I'm sorry I'm not able to articulate it intellectually in the way I want to. But, this whole thing is set up to destroy man and women altogether. But they have to venerate the woman because they know that the woman, she won't listen until it's too late. And I'm just saying this out of love. I love women. But the truth be told is the people that are creating these ideologies and tinkering with society from a social standpoint, they understand the mind of the woman even better than some of these low-level dudes out here do. If these dudes were a lot like the intelligence agency, they would understand what I'm saying. But, they kind of think on the level of a woman themselves. And that's why the woman is so unhappy. And there we go. We got another dummy walking down the street. See, this is why I hate podcasts out in the open. Because I'm trying to avoid having to walk past and talk to people. I don't want people in my way. So I may end up having to end it. But this is how the podcast is going to go, where I'm going to be walking up and down this street. I might try to do it early in the morning. But, it seems like when I do a podcast and I get to tell them the truth, from a spiritual standpoint, it's almost like all the demons start coming out to try to stop you. So now you got 4, 5, 6 cars pulling up. They weren't there 2 minutes ago, but now that Lance gets to speaking the truth, now here they all come turning around, staring at you. So that's what I don't like as well. I know it sounds kind of corny. Oh, he's religious. No, man. It's not a religion. It's just the damn truth. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes when you speak how it's supposed to be said, sometimes the energy that comes your way ends up being, and because like I said, there's only good and evil in this world. There's no real in between. So sometimes when you're trying to do good, a lot of times evil will come in and try to stop you. That's why we got cancel culture. Like notice how when somebody tries to speak a bit of truth, they do what? They shut you down. They don't want you to tell the truth, because what the truth does is the truth, wakes people up, and in some cases it separates people, and it also puts a perspective on things that makes people think. If there's any bit of logic in some of the people out here, if they get truth sprinkled into something, it's going to fuck up what they tried to create, because they're trying to create an era of delusion in this society, and get people to think in a delusional, emotional fashion. And people are like, Lance, you sound like a conspiracy theorist. You're a conspiracy theorist. Look, it's not a conspiracy theorist. You can see the writing on the wall. All you got to do is look at Facebook. All you got to do is look at TikTok. I mean, the relationship genre of TikTok and the things that I hear some of these women say, it's very depressing, because these women seem to think that the world, like a relationship is a two-way streak anyways. Like the both parties, the man has to be happy too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand, like, if the man's going to jump through all these hula hoops and jump through fire, and he's going to be your protector and your provider and lover, then you have to be a woman that's willing to be, kind, loving, and soft. You can't be a German shepherd, that's growling and at your teeth with foam, with drool coming out of your mouth like you're about to bite him, and expect a man to want to be with that. I think that's one of the problems with the society, is that they're trying to train the man to be a drone, but in order for, and I don't want to get on the sentiment of trying to act like this is a manosphere channel, or it's a, hey, I'm Meek Tower Red Pill. That's not what it's about. I mean, I comment on Undead Chronics videos all the time, You know, if you want that smoke, you go deal with Undead. Undead Chronic does the red pill better than me. I'm just giving the truth. All right, you know. But, you know, I don't need to roast any of these hoes on here. We already that's Undead Chronic. I'm going to leave that to him. All right. He sees my channel. He might react to this. Who knows? But anyways, you know, that's going to be the podcast for today. You know, this is the best I can do for now until I figure out a studio setup, because I really don't want to be walking back and forth. Like, look, you know, it kind of makes you dizzy seeing me hold this thing up. So for those watching this podcast, I'm sorry it's got to be this way, but it's, you know, it is what it is. Plus, I'm doing this on a busy road. So, you know, it just seems like it's getting busier and busier now that I did this podcast. But I'm just glad that I was able to present something. You know, people have been asking me to guest feature in my podcast, you know, friends. You know, this podcast ain't going to be about, you know, because the guy that produces my podcast, you know, his reason for doing a podcast is more based on him trying to act as if he's going to bring people on his show and it's going to make him some sort of celebrity because he brought, you know, one of his buddies on there. Understand something about a podcast, especially in the YouTube manosphere or any manosphere, you know, or any type of platform. When you got a YouTube channel and you're doing a podcast, you got to have something interesting to talk about. You can't be some dumb schmuck that says, you know what, I'm going to make a podcast and, you know, I'm just going to have all my family members on there. I mean, that's great and all and cool, but, you know, unless it's a podcast that has to do with the theme involving family, I mean, if that's what it's going to do, then fine, that's your audience. But if you're planning on doing a podcast in your basement because, you know, one, you're inspired by me because I did a podcast on the Anchor app, because that's really what it is him swagger jagging, you know, even though he won't admit it. But, you know, like I asked him, I said, what is your podcast going to be about? This is the guy that produces that studio setup that I was using. And he really didn't have an answer. You know, and I almost told him, I said, you know, you got to have something to talk about. I mean, you do mortgages. You know, let's say you're a mortgage or a tax guy. That should be what your podcast is about, you know, because you have to aim it at a particular audience. What's my podcast about? My podcast is more about covering things from, you know, a three-dimensional perspective as high as I can. So let's say, for instance, I'm to Kanye West's quote-unquote anti-Semitic comments. I'm going to cover it from an angle of what it's really about because, you know, there's the narrative in the news and then there's the truth. So this would be technically, I guess, a pro-truth YouTube channel, right? Just like there's a lot of other pro-truth YouTube channels. Sorry, my face. I can't keep my camera there. But that's really what it's all about. You know, and, you know, you got to have a theme. You got to have something that that people want to, you know, listen to. You know, nobody gives a fuck about you being in your basement and, you know, you're interviewing one of your buddies that's woke from down the street, you know. You know, they want to know, they want you to, I mean, unless you're planning on getting celebrities or, you know, somebody that's, you know, that's popping, you know what I'm saying, to a certain extent, or has their own YouTube channel, you know, nobody's going to give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I invited the chick that cuts my hair at the salon on my show, nobody's going to know who she is. You know, no matter how cute she is. I'm like, who's that? You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't give a fuck. All right? You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I got a lot of friends, and people were asking me to do a podcast and a YouTube channel and a blog because my Facebook statuses were hilarious to them. And it's like, that's still no reason for me to do a podcast. I got to do a podcast because I got something to talk about. Jesus Christ, I hate this road, though. Sorry that I had to change subjects because now I got to deal with all these cars. But you get what the sentiment I'm getting at. Like, you know, I had to wait until everybody else did their whack-ass podcast in my circle. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to do mine. But I'm going to do mine the slow way, like mom's cooking. All right, and take my time. See, here comes a bus. So, you know, I mean, this podcast is already more interesting than that because I'm complaining about the background. And for some people, that might be funny. They're like, holy shit, this guy is trying to do a podcast. And there's like 50 cars passing, staring and looking at him all funny. So that's entertainment for them as well. versus, you doing a podcast in your basement and you call in your buddy Joe Schmo and he talks about, high school, people are going to be like, okay, well, what is this podcast getting at? What's the importance? What's the relevance of it? Okay, you went to Port Huron High School or Port Huron Northern. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you trying to get at? Why are you guys even on here telling that story? Is this going to be High School Stories podcast? Or is this going to be a podcast about your life that is pretty boring? You know what I'm saying? So for those people that watch this, if you want to do a podcast, you have to have a subject. Even if it's as stupid as somebody, you holding a phone and you going out and you're talking and there's a bunch of cars coming by and it's funny and entertaining, but you still should have, you got to have something that someone's going to be interested in because they're going to watch this stuff and they're going to criticize it. They're going to say, look, I don't like that background. Hell, I don't like your nose. I don't like how you look, But and even to order to get to that, you still have to have something that piques somebody's interest audience-wise. A lot of people that go viral on YouTube, man, they put the money into their channel too. They create ads. They do all that, which is going to be something I do in the future, because I do plan on making this podcast take off. But it's going to take time and dedication. But most importantly, you got to have something relevant to talk about. If you a stupid ass motherfucker, then you shouldn't be doing a podcast. That's for people that are intelligent and got something that they can speak about that people want to hear. People got to want to hear your voice. I was been begged over the years to do a podcast because I was in the radio business, at the college station where I graduated from. And, people have been wanting me to do a podcast forever. People want me to talk shit about this shitty ass town known as Port Huron, which will be an episode. Will that episode go viral? Probably not. I'll have to spend $20, $20 a day to make Port Huron go viral. Come on. Port Huron is great to talk shit about that, but that's only benefits the people that locally are going to watch it. I've done podcasts before or have tried to do radio shows and, only 4 or 5 of my friends were listening to it, even though 50 people hit me up and said, do a podcast. So when I do a podcast and I'm particularly talking to the local sector of my friends, fucking pay attention to it, because this podcast, I'm going to say some things. I'm only treading on the light shit. I'm being nice right now. Well, a few, maybe 4, 6 or 7, maybe 8 or 9. I don't know how many episodes, but once I get real comfortable doing this shit, you're going to start to see the real Lance Hill come out. The real Lance Hill don't give a fuck. All right. Just how I'm talking. I'm going to be real brutal coming soon. But I figure, it's better to get into the podcast and do it lightly and, just tread nicely with the podcast and then go from there. Then you can start to build up your personality and then you could, start to show a little bit more of how you really feel. Because I'm just being nice. It's almost like, hey, man, I don't want them to cancel me just yet. Let me get started. So eventually I'm going to get to that level to where people are going to start to see that, hey, man, I don't have a filter. I say it like it is. If you don't like it, then click off. Because this podcast ain't all just about making money. You got a lot of people that are doing podcasts for all the wrong reasons. They think they're going to become a millionaire off of making a podcast. And that rarely happens. If you're able to make $1,000 off of this podcast, if I was able to make, $5,000 off of this podcast a month, I would be happy because, hey, man, great. I made that much money. But am I expecting to make money off of it? No. Am I hoping? Sure. But the whole purpose is to get the word of truth and wisdom that I have to speak about out. Because, wisdom and all that other stuff is better. It's just as good as silver and gold, right? Now, here's the thing. Wisdom don't pay the bills, though. And I ain't no damn fool. So, that being said, we're going to end the podcast here before some other loud-ass, ugly-ass, annoying-ass car passes by. I'm going to post this on YouTube. And, we got a 35-minute episode. See how a podcast can only be 15 minutes? You only plan for it to be 15. Sometimes it ends up being 2 hours. And that's when you know you got a lot to say. So I might do another one tomorrow. Who knows? It just depends. You know, but let me get off of here. Hello, orange truck. Your weird loud ass. All right, guys, I'm out of here. World's most legendary podcast in the cold. I'm out.